watching the History Fella channel, and in this video we're looking at the Battle of Hancock. The Battle of Hancock was fought during the Confederate Romney expedition of the American Civil War on January the 5th and 6th, 1862, near Hancock, Maryland. Major General Stonewall Jackson of the Confederate States Army, commanding his own Valley District, and Brigadier General William W. Loring's force, known as the Confederate Army of the Northwest, began moving against Union Army forces in the Shenandoah Valley on January the 1st. After light fighting near Bath, Virginia, Jackson's men reached the vicinity of Hancock late on January the 4th and briefly fired on the town with artillery. Union Brigadier General Frederick W. Lander refused the Confederate request to surrender on January the 5th, and that day and the next saw exchanges of artillery fire between the two sides. The Confederates burned a bridge on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad on January the 5th, but withdrew on the 7th. Jackson later moved against Romney, Virginia, and occupied the town on January the 15th, after Union soldiers abandoned it. Romney was ordered to abandon on January the 30th by Confederate States Secretary of War, after Loring complained about Jackson's orders. In late December 1861, during the American Civil War, Major General Stonewall Jackson of the Confederate States Army was tasked with defending the Shenandoah Valley in the state of Virginia. Between his own Valley District and Brigadier General William W. Loring's Confederate Army of the Northwest, Jackson had about 7,500 volunteer soldiers, as well as 2,500 militiamen and roughly 660 cavalrymen, a force he viewed as insufficient to hold the valley against the Union Army. After writing to General Joseph E. Johnston, Jackson received permission to attack the Union position at Romney, Virginia, before Union troops received additional reinforcements. Jackson also intended to capture the towns of Bath, Virginia, and Hancock, Maryland, although Johnston may not have known about the portion of the plan. The movement of the campaign began at 6 a.m. on January the 1st, 1862, with the Stonewall Brigade leading the way, followed by Loring's men. Other units, including the militia component of the Rockbridge Artillery, fell behind schedule. Jackson's train did not move until 4 o'clock. The weather was cold during the march, and Loring strongly disagreed with Jackson's handling of the campaign. The Confederates reached Bath on January the 3rd and skirmished with the Union troops outside the town, but were unable to capture it. The next day, the Union troops abandoned Bath and retreated after a brief fight, escaping across Sir John's Run to Hancock. After reaching the vicinity of Hancock with the leading elements of his force, Jackson ordered the Rockbridge Artillery to fire on the civilian-filled town. This was in revenge for Union bombardments of Shepherdstown, Virginia, in 1861. The artillery fire began at about 6 o'clock in the evening and continued until 11 o'clock that night, damaging some buildings but causing no casualties. That night, Union Brigadier General Frederick W. Lander arrived in Hancock to take command. He planned for aggressive action against the Confederates the next day. By the morning of January the 5th, the temperature had fallen to freezing, where it would remain steady for the next 3 days. The Stonewall Brigade was brought up that morning, and Jackson aligned his men on Oryx Hill across the flooded and ice-choked Potomac River from Hancock. At 9:30, Colonel Turner Ashby was sent across the river with a request for Lander to surrender. Jackson warned that he would shell them and capture the town if Lander refused. Upon meeting Lander, Ashby was instructed to tell Jackson to bombard and be damned, and was given a written rejection of the offer. While Ashby returned to the Confederate lines, Lander ordered that civilians leave the town and assign the 84th Pennsylvania Infantry Regiment to serve as a fire brigade in case of the coming bombardment started any fires. The 110th Pennsylvania Infantry Regiment defended warehouses, and 2 pieces of artillery were positioned on a hill behind the town. The Confederate cannons opened fire at about 2 o'clock, and sporadic artillery duel, which inflicted no casualties but continued until dusk. A Confederate detachment under Colonel Albert Rust destroyed a bridge over the Big Cacapon River, belonging to the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, while another detachment failed in an attempt to destroy a dam upriver from Hancock. While Jackson opened on January the 6th with a bombardment of Hancock by the Rockbridge artillery, Lander still desired to take offensive action against Jackson. He asked Major General Nathaniel P. Banks to either cross the Potomac in Jackson's rear or to send him reinforcements, with which Lander would attack the Confederates directly. Banks had ordered Brigadier General Alpheus Williams' brigade to march towards Hancock on January the 5th, but sent the request for offensive action through Major General George B. McClellan, who viewed it as too risky and rejected it. Later that day, Jackson attempted to cross the Potomac at Sir John's Run, but was repulsed. Having damaged the telegraph lines in the area, Jackson abandoned the attempt to take Hancock on January the 7th and withdrew. The exchanges of artillery fire had caused little damage. The National Park Service estimates that the 2 sides combined suffered about 25 casualties during the fighting. If you found the information in this video helpful or informative, please feel free to give the video a thumbs up or a like and subscribe to the channel.